Well, hiya. I'm Donna, this is Nick. Rogers is my husband. And yeah, we're just really delighted to be with you this evening. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for asking us to be here. So I just want to open in prayer really. That prayer was beautiful. I just want to open in prayer. So Lord Jesus, we thank you so much for this fellowship this evening. And we just ask you, Lord, that you would just be in the midst of us, Lord. Lord, whatever we say, whatever I say, Nick says, Lord, let it be words that you want to come out, Lord. Help us to just share our lives and how you have ordained it, Lord. And I pray in Jesus' name. And we just ask you, Holy Spirit, that you just be in us and amongst us this evening. Amen. 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 So, who are we? Who are we? So, yeah, I'm Donna, Nick, my husband and wife. We live in Glossop in Derbyshire. So, I used to live in Sheffield. I lived in Sheffield 10 years. And then I moved to Glossop. And Nick lived in Salford, originally from Coventry, via Salford, via Glossop. So, we've kind of always lived in that sort of area, you know, kind of. And 5.5 years ago, we kind of decided that we were going to go to Love Life Church in Barnsley. And that was really weird because Nick saw Pastor Bruce online, didn't you, during COVID. And he just said, oh, yeah, just hear this guy online. So we just started listening, and then we joined a prayer platform that he'd set up. And we started coming over, and we just carried on coming over. And then in the end it became, we better just keep coming. So we joined the church 5.5 years ago. We got made deacon and deaconess last week, was it? Something like that. And yeah, that's us. The church is growing. You know, we're obviously seeing some growth in the church, which is fantastic. And, you know, if I would pray anything for you this evening is that, you know, you want some old people to join this. You want, you know, to get some new young people to come along as well, you know, and just join you guys. Tonight we just want to tell you a story of hope and light over darkness, and the role that Jesus plays in our lives and has played in our lives to get us to this place. So I'm just going to hand over to Nick just to start.
When we went to Barnsley, we didn't just decide, we really felt God was telling us to go there. We have been in an Anglican church for 19 years, and that's where we came to faith. I was a warden there, and they worshipped in the morning, we worshipped over here in the afternoon. So we were going in the morning, coming over here in the afternoon, and we really felt after about 6 months that God was calling us here. It's difficult to get to, it's 25 miles for us, nearly 40 minutes, but we really, really felt, and since then we've played a significant role in the church and supported the pastor. As Donna said, I'm originally from Coventry. That's where I grew up. I grew up in very much a middle class family. My dad had a really good job. He was a telephone engineer for the old post office before they became British Telecom. He used to design telephone systems. My mum was fortunate that she didn't have to work. She stayed at home and was a homemaker. I was mad on football. I played football at junior level, at a high level. I played for my town and my county, and my greatest desire was to become a professional footballer. I would have been at Carrow Road tonight watching Coventry if we hadn't been here. So you're very honoured. So you're very honoured, because I go with my boys, my two eldest boys, to most games. So that's a little bit about me. So I ended up, I had a gambling addiction for 25 years. And I think that started, that seed that was sown in my life was in my grand's front room, because we used to play cards and we used to play dominoes, and we would play for a little bit of money, not a lot of money. My gran also had a Coral telephone account, and I didn't realise until many years after that my grandfather must have had a little bit of addiction to gambling. So that seed, that generational thing was it passed down a little. So when my football career came to an abrupt end at about 16, I had a crazy foot injury that took me out of the game for about 6 months. I had trials for Coventry and Villa and Wolves. I was a goalkeeper and nothing came of it. I met somebody while playing football for another club, a feeder club, to a semi-professional outfit. I met somebody called Kay in Belgium, and I was playing football out there. We met in a nightclub and became close, and at 17 years of age I left home, which was a major shock to my parents because I was working. I've worked mostly in finance over the years. At the time I was working for a building society, and I just upsticked and left and went to Manchester, which was a major shock to them. They never really got over it. I then went on to work for banks, Barclaycard, a shipping firm, but on the finance and shipping side. So that's how my career path sort of took hold. So I moved up to Manchester. It was a very different culture. My ex-wife, her family were, it was a much tougher existence for them than I had experienced, but I actually found it quite exciting. The front door was open, people were coming and going all the time, but what I didn't realise initially, there was quite a lot of crime being involved. But it was the perfect environment for me for my addiction to start growing and festering and getting out of control. I was working for an American bank. I worked for Bank of America, had a really good job as an 18-year-old. I was really well paid, and but I was gambling every lunchtime, every single lunchtime or after work, and the debts were spiralling out of control. But my at the bank I could borrow money to help pay those debts off. And I started to become more and more secretive, as you do with addiction, and hide things, hide the letters that come into the door when you owe money to various people, like the utilities, or you're not paid your council tax or your poll tax in those days. So my whole personality was beginning to change. I was a really happy-go-lucky kid. I didn't have any issues at all, and yeah, just everything started to get out of control, and I started to commit fraud and to pay for my gambling. And my mood swings, my anger, my frustration just poured out all the time. And of course, it's no good for your marriage. We were having kids, they were experiencing lots and lots of things. And in the end, my mental health just completely imploded. I was just like lost. And there were periods where I lost my jobs through my gambling addiction. You know, I couldn't hold down the jobs properly. And in 1987, I was sacked by the bank after 9 years service. And you know, I was absolutely distraught. But the first thing I went and did was, as I got my letter at the reception, was go to the bookmakers on the way out. I just lost everything. My wife had moved away from me for the first time. I've got to sell my house now because the bank is saying, right, you can't have your mortgage at 3% now. It's going up to 14, 15%. So I had to sell my house. the profit on the house went to pay gambling debts off. This was a cycle that just kept going and going and going over many, many years. So we would split up, we'd get back together, split up. The relationship was addictive as well, and the different jobs I had. And then later on, after many losses, no win was ever big enough. Yeah. In March '99, I won 90-odd thousand in the afternoon at Cheltenham. Wow. In 4 days I put that back, and then a good portion of my business. At this time I got my own business, got a greengrocers off-licence sandwich shop. It was so cash rich. It was cash rich. It was nearly all, you know, apart from paying out for the goods, it was nearly all profit. You know, that should have set me up for life. 10 years of that would have set me up for life. But I couldn't keep my hand out the till. And that was a roller coaster for all the time. So in July '99, after sort of 19 years of marriage, my ex said enough's enough. And all the doors shut. I wasn't allowed to see my children. I've got 5 children from the first marriage. I ended up on the streets in Bolton. And my mental health just absolutely imploded. Wow. I did things that I tried to commit suicide a couple of times, can't say what, because of the age of the people here. And I then ended up in Meadowbrook in Salford. Meadowbrook's a psychiatric ward. I was there for 5 months. I didn't see any of my kids, I didn't have any visitors, and it was a very, very dark time. And it was at that time, on Millennium Day, so they'd had the celebration the night before. The hospital had tried to make it as nice. There was only 6 of us on the ward, everybody else got sent home. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have a home to go to, I didn't have a relationship to go to. My parents had said no more. Everybody said no more. Wow. So I was vulnerable, so they kept me in. Anyway, on Millennium Day, after the night of the celebration, I walked off the ward. I went walking. I disappeared for about 13 hours. Wow. Apparently the police were looking for me, but they passed me several times, but nobody stopped. And I ended up in a park in Salford near the hospital, and I did something there that would have taken me out, and it was the first time I can remember crying out to God. I screamed, if there's a God, you've got to help me. And from that, I sat in the pitch black. There was some woods behind me, there was some people in front of me, some green grass in front of me, and these 2 police officers came from behind and said, "Nick, don't do it." And they talked me out of what I was going to do and put me in the van and took me back to the hospital. I know something that night shifted. Something shifted that night. Wow. I couldn't describe it at the time, but the next day somebody came alongside me and we started to talk, and I started to build a relationship with Paul, this particular nurse, male nurse, and we started to do some extra activity and stuff. And it was about 2 months later I got discharged, and then I got discharged to a halfway house. And it was such a culture shock for me, from where I'd come from. You know, nice home, never had any issues, and I've got to share a house with 10 guys. 10 guys, share the toilet, clean their mess up, clean, you know, and it was a massive culture shock to me.
Yeah, I believe
But
it.
do you know what? It was a safe house, because the 2 people that were running that house, Lillian was, she was bad cop, but lovely. She was a Catholic, and then there was Lillian, who described herself as a lapsed Christian. She was good cop. But that house was a real blessing to me in the end, once I got over the shock and once I got over. And that is where I just started to rebuild a little bit of my life.
Wow.
Yeah, so in September 2001, I just got to a point where I'd had a few relationships before, they'd always come to nothing. I trained as a midwife and as a nurse, and I was teaching midwifery in Sheffield, that's what I was doing, so I did that for 10 years. And I'd moved to Gloucester because of a relationship, and that had just broken down.
Wow.
So I decided, this was like in the Easter, that year. The Easter before, I had just had a stroke. I had a stroke in 99, a right-sided stroke. Wasn't very well with it. I had to walk with a stick, you know, just all sorts were going wrong. And I remember what I thought, I should go to church really, it's Easter, you know. I was brought up as a Catholic, you know, it was the idea of you go to church at Easter, Christmas.
Yeah.
And I thought, I think I need to go to church. But I suppose I ought to go to a Catholic church, but the Catholic church was like quite a long walk away. And as I got down to the end of my street, there was this Anglican church on the end of the street. And as I turned left, I heard a distinct voice said to me, Donna, I want you to go into St. Luke's, which is what it was called. And it was just like I stopped in my tracks and kind of looked around, and the voice said again, I want you to go into St. Luke's. So I remember turning, feeling like very comfortable about it, but turning right into this church. And I remember just saying to Colin, the vicar then, you know, I think God's just told me to come into your church. And he just said, well, you better come in there if that's the case. So I went in, and do you know what? That church blessed me. They looked after me. They cared for me. Yeah, it was just amazing. They were just so lovely, such lovely, God-centered people. And the vicar was just amazing as well. You know, he was really a godly man, and they really looked after me. And so the relationship I was in fell foul at that point, and I ended up going living on my own. And I got into this cottage, bought a cottage, which was a few steps from the church, and that was it. And I'm saying to God, like, you know, this is it now. I'm just me and you, Jesus. Nobody else. We're not having anybody else. And September 2001, and I was talking to my mum, you know, what should we do? Should we go somewhere? And we saw in the paper, you know, these trips to like Paris, you can go to these city breaks. And I said, oh, shall we go on one? Shall we go? So we decided on Paris. So we decided, right, we're going to go to Paris. So we booked it. We got on the coach that early morning, got on the coach, and the coach is trundling off down. And we get to Eccles, and lo and behold, Nick gets on with another couple of lads and these two ladies. Oh no, one lady, it was I saw him get on. It was quite a long coach, I saw him get on. But that was it, and everyone just carried on chatting. And then we got down to the, we went over on the ferry, didn't we? We got down to the ferry. And I didn't really see him then either, but the only time I really saw him properly was when we got to the hotel where we were staying, and we were booking in, and he was in front of us. And I just remarked to myself, you know, he's really tall, and we were gorgeously slim then. Honestly, if you saw a wedding photo, you'd think, who are those two people? Because we just look so different. But
wow.
yeah, this is what 20 odd years of marriage does to you. But anyway, so we go there. I'm thinking, oh, yeah, it's quite tall. It's great. Anyway, that was that. We go in, get checked in. Next morning, get up. They were taking us to Versailles, weren't they, that morning? So my mum's there, right, come on, get on the coach. Get on the coach, go to Versailles. And we're looking around, everything. Now, Nick told me later that he was stalking me around Versailles. I didn't know he was stalking me around Versailles. I probably would have said something if he hadn't known it. But he was following me around apparently. Anyway, that evening they were taking us on this trip around Paris at night. and the Millennium Lights was still on, and the Eiffel Tower looked amazing, and they said they were going to take us to the Eiffel Tower, and you know. So we go to the Eiffel Tower, and while we're going to the Eiffel Tower, we're under the Eiffel Tower, I was trying to take photographs very badly, and Nick said, suddenly this voice says, would you like us to take a photo of you, you know, and you and your mum? And yeah, of course it's him. So we get back to the coach, and then he said, would you like to go for a drink afterwards when we get back? And, okay, so we're going for a drink. And mum's going mad now because her daughter is in Paris with this strange bloke who she doesn't even know, and blah blah blah. Anyway, top and bottom, we were kind of like just joined together at the hip really for the whole trip. After that, came back home and decided that we would carry on seeing each other. He was in Eccles, I was in Gloucester, but the train conveniently got, you know, we could meet up. And that's
I told her he lived in a 10-bedroom
Oh, we did,
house.
yeah, he said he lived in a 10-bedroom house. No,
I love that.
no, but the thing was, he was so suited and booted, and what it was, he was doing some stuff, he was doing some volunteer work, weren't you, with Age Concern, and the ladies at the Monton branch, where the footballers used to leave all the gear, they used to pick stuff out for him, so he was dressed to the nines. I felt like a right scruff, I thought, I wouldn't be able to scruff him when he compared to him. And yeah, I live in this 10-bedroom house, and I'm thinking...
It wasn't lying.
Well, it wasn't, but I'm thinking, things were starting not to quite add up, you know, once the boss came on. It's like 10-bedroom house, what are you doing on a coach trip to Paris, you know, what's this all about? Anyway, and I thought he was one of the carers, I didn't realise he was one of the clients. He hadn't even told me that either, it was just like, we were, anyway, assumptions. So we decided to meet up when we got back. Anyway, it was just this whirlwind sort of romance, wasn't it? You know, we used to meet up and everything, we used to go out together and stuff. And, but then my mum said, when are you going to tell him that you're a Christian? You know, because you're going to have to tell him, aren't you? You know, at some point. My mum didn't think a lot about me being a Christian. She thought I was in a cult of some description. You know, she wasn't very happy about it at all. But it was like, oh, but when we were in Paris still, wasn't it? And we were sat at this table, and Trevor, who was with him, with this tiny little guy, and I was sat at the table, and I'm saying, God, how am I going to tell him that I'm a Christian without it sounding crazy? You know, like, because I said to him, it's not like I'm going to marry him, is it? You know, I've just met him. And, oh, well. So, anyway, sat there at the table, and all of a sudden, Trevor says to me, Donna, are you a Christian? From right down the table. And so now I say, yeah, and now I've got to tell everybody in the room that I'm a Christian. And that it's not just for Sundays, you know, I'm a Christian. And anyway, he's taken it all in, and then he said to me afterwards, well, you know, would it do me any good to go to church? And I said, well, it certainly wouldn't do you any harm, would it, to go to church? So I wasn't going to push him to come to church. Anyway, he started coming up to church and getting to know people that I knew, and on the weekend he'd come up to our church and stay with some friends and go up to our church, and you know, and anyway, I went to a church weekend away, leaving him looking after my cats in my cottage, and I was just praying, God, you know, I left all these little tracts everywhere, you know, in the house, you know, like little white Jesus booklet, little this, little bit of that, and really subtle, you know, and anyway, he rang me up one evening on the thing and said, I've just prayed that prayer at the back of the thing, you know, I've prayed a prayer of commitment. So everybody behind me was going, yeah, you know, like going mad.
Wow.
So yeah, so even after that, it was like it was whirlwind, wasn't it? We wanted to get married quite quickly, really, because we weren't young, we still are young, and we were running out of time, and I was like, can't we just get married? No, you'll have to wait. So we got married in December 2022.
Wow.
2002, sorry. We got married at Christmas, 21st of December, wasn't it? And we had this fabulous wedding. We had no money, so the church we just hired a hall and everybody brought food. Somebody helped me make the dress, somebody made the cake, somebody did this, somebody did that. And by the time we finished, so there was a room like this but groaning with food, wasn't there, tables like this. And we just had this beautiful wedding day, didn't we, in December. And then we went away on honeymoon, just out to York, didn't we, for honeymoon, and then came back, and it was great. And about 18 months later, everything just went splat. It just went completely off the rails. And it was so awful and so bad that I couldn't tell anybody. I was scared of telling anybody, or at least of telling people in church, guess what, this big fairy tale thing that you all think is great has just majorly gone off the rails here. And it was just awful. I just had this absolute awful time. And, I had a lot of shame, a lot of sadness, a lot of anger, and I used to be praying to Jesus, why have you put me with this man in, if this is going to happen, and and it was just so awful. Eventually, in the end, I had to tell people, because you can't keep that to yourself for so long, can you, really? And what it was basically was that he'd gone back to gambling. He completely wiped out any money we had in the bank, and we didn't have a lot, and he'd wiped it all out. And it wasn't just that; it was the behaviour that went with it. He kept going missing. I kept answering the police. I didn't know where he was. He threatened suicide before he drove off, and it was just awful. And it got so bad in the end. And I did kind of ask people, people did kind of get round me in the end, and I just said, it's just so awful. I just couldn't bear it any longer, and I thought, I've just got to change the locks. I can't bear this man keep coming upending my life. So I had the locks changed. Everybody always kind of looks at me funny when I say I had the locks changed, but I did. And he was banging on the door. I'm like, no, you're not coming in. But friends at church really helped us, didn't they? And some people, we had a sister church. So St James was the main church that I was at then, and then there was St Luke's was the sister church that I originally went to. And they kind of looked after you, didn't they? They kind of really took care of you. And my church, St James Church took care of me. And it was never quite sure what was going to happen really, how it was going to all pan out. But obviously Nick had to get some help for his mental health, because now he was depressed and ended up on tons of Prozac, didn't he? He was just so depressed. And couldn't see his children. That was the worst bit. His wife wouldn't allow him to see his children. So we had all that going on. The only way that he could see to kind of alleviate that pain is, what do you always do? It's like any addict, go back to what you know, isn't it? That thing that stopped you feeling so bad. Maybe just go back to it. And years later, I just had to tell him this bit. Years later, we went to watch Coventry, because I go to football as well. I go to watch Coventry with it. It was Love Me, Love My Team. So we were going to watch Coventry play Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough. And there is a big church on the left-hand side, big church on the left-hand side.
Opposite the cop.
Opposite the cop end. And it had a big banner on it saying, Jesus saves, don't... And beyond that then is, what?
The ground stadium.
The ground stadium. So what did Nick do? He bypassed the Jesus saves bit and went straight down to the ground stadium. I didn't know that until we go to this match years later. And he's telling me, that's the ground stadium. And I went ballistic. It's like, and he couldn't understand why I went mad. There's me at home, terrified. What's he doing? And he has ignored the church sign and gone down to the ground stadium. It just was beyond thinking. And it was awful. It was a terrible time. I had bailiffs come to the house. The mortgage wasn't getting paid. It was just getting completely out of control. And I just thought, I don't know what to do. So he decided that, he'd have to look somewhere to live, because friends had been putting him up. So he goes and finds this place up in Crowden outside Rotherham. which is like right out on, you know, going out towards the Woodhead. And this place was awful. And he always says that he chose it because it was awful. And he thought that when I came to visit him there, that I'd say, this is awful. You've got to come home. But I didn't. And I took in some fairy lights, I took in a Christmas tree, I took in some bedding, I came outside it and I cried because I thought, this is awful, it's just awful. But I thought, no, you're not coming home yet. So anyway, he came over one night, didn't you?
Yeah.
And we were chatting, and it was like, you know, and he saying, you really need a job, Nick, you know, you need a job.
So I end up going on.
Oh, but before that, we need a job, and we prayed the following morning, literally. Never had a prayer request answered so fast. Knock on the door. And somebody that we knew would come, and they were going to start building the house for our associate vicar. Nick, I want you to come and work with me. I've got you a job working with me on this house.
Wow.
The next day.
That was an instant answer to prayer.
Instant.
Absolute instant answer to prayer. Yeah. I wasn't allowed to sleep in the bed. I had to sleep on the settee that night. But yeah. So I started working on this house building. Never built a house before in my life. I was told that basically just to keep the site safe, shovel, pick bricks up, stone up, whatever anybody asks me to do, you just do it. It was a real learning curve for me because obviously I hadn't worked on a building site. I was having to work with people that I didn't know. There were times when my confidence crashed so low that I'd end up in tears in front of like really big grown men, and I found it really difficult. But the picture I got was I was on that job from the first day, and the bulldozer went through the dry stone wall at the front and started to dig the foundations out for the footings. And that was a picture of like where my life was, like really low at the bottom. But as the house went up, I did recognise that my life was starting to get some order back. Because I was working, I had responsibilities, but there were a lot of people praying for us.
Wow.
And I found out a few years after that there was a couple fasting for us.
Wow.
And so as the house went up, I got a bit stronger. I was still living in this place. Donna was doing a writing course because she wanted to go to university and do a creative writing degree. And so the place where she was studying was literally opposite the house we were building. So we used to meet every lunchtime. And Donna's view was that she really, really believed, whether I did or not, or whether I was mentally strong enough, that we were meant to be together. God had brought us together. Her faith was massive.
Wow.
And strong.
That's amazing.
Her faith. Anyway, the house is virtually 3/4 up, got the roof on, and we get invited to go to a Christian conference down at Detlin in Kent. And we'd been before, but this couple has said to us, you know, why don't you come down to this conference? And we went, and it was camping, and it was something I don't particularly enjoy. But we have this huge tent.
The fitted a family of 6.
Yeah. And Donna said on one of the days, I want to go to a seminar called Praying with Fire. And I was real hesitant about the power and the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. I didn't really understand any of it. There hadn't been a great amount of teaching in our church, although our vicar at the time was really trying to learn and grow himself. I said, well, I'm not going, and Donna said, well, I am, so it's up to you, you can sit here. And I looked like Colonel Gaddafi in a big tent, sat there.
He had like the sun behind him with the tent flapping.
No.
Anyway,
Honestly, that's what it was
anyway,
like.
I was so insecure.
That was funny.
I was really, really insecure. I thought, I can't let her go and leave me on my own. So we went and we sat near the back, and this lady called Catherine Brown and preacher Arnold Mwangi, Ugandan guy, who both had amazing ministries, came in and they were just so full of the Holy Spirit. They were laughing and they came in and they believed. They said, God's going to do something amazing in this place today, and we believe people are going to get healed and set free. And
Wow.
it was about 80 degrees. And we were in a tent that held about 400 people, and they had to open the sides to let a bit of air come in, and also let people that wanted to get into the tent watch from outside. All of a sudden they started praying, and the walls of the tent just started to shimmer,
Wow.
and the roof, and it was like what I would consider something a bit like the day of Pentecost. People then started going down in the spirit, not pushed, not touched, just stood there. And this woman fell in my lap, and I went, oh, like this.
No.
Everything I was sceptical of was happening in front of my eyes. I can't remember what was preached that day,
Wow.
but there was a call forward for prayer, and Catherine said, anybody wants to come forward for prayer, come forward. And I was really into my greyhound racing and horse racing and football betting, but I was like a greyhound out the traps, and I went like that. And I was like first up, and Catherine just said to me, just tell me your first name. So I said, it's Nick. So she just started praying a simple prayer, and she said, God showed me you've got a picture of about gambling, and you've had depression and anxiety all these years. In the name of Jesus, be healed. And it was as simple as that. And I went down. She was tiny, smaller than Donna, and she couldn't have pushed me down, and I just went down. I can't remember how long I was on the floor, but I saw this sheet of brilliant light and everything. When I did get to my feet and I stood up, I felt like this thing lift from my ankles up my body and over the top of my head. Well, in my racing days in the winter, I used to wear a full-length sheepskin, and I thought I looked good. It was like a champagne colour sheepskin right down to just below my knees, and I thought I looked the biz, like on the tracks. And it was like that had just been lifted over me. Anyway, we went back to the place where we were camping, the area where we were camping. There was a guy called Steve, and Steve had got a similar story, not about addiction, but about losing his kids. And he was a prison officer at the time.
Wow.
And he came up to me and he said, God showed me a picture of you, Nick. And he said, you know that monkey you've had on your back, it's jumped off. And he said, I've seen all these chains break off you. But he said, God's had you in a fire blanket. What's the fire blanket? Well, I can say now, because I sat in Buell Hill Park with petrol and a lighter
Wow.
when the police picked me up.
Wow.
And God is shown in that picture. And it was the most amazing thing to me, because I thought, God, you're so real. Because only you,
Wow.
and 2 police officers, and obviously anybody on the mental health unit who got told, and me, know that story. Only you, God. And that night I cried out to you. I've never since that day had the desire to ever go into a bookmaker's, go on a racetrack, go anywhere near a gambling establishment, ever.
Wow.
I've never placed a penny in the job that we did at a later stage, you know, when we ran community cafe. I resisted lottery money, anything to do with gambling. Went to the doctors a few months after getting home, and we both had the same doctor, Nicola Thorley. And she said, "How's the new medication?" Now, I wouldn't advise anybody to come off your medication without going to your doctor.
Yeah.
But I did. I unwisely, but I did, because I knew God had healed me so deep down in my heart. I knew God had healed me. Take that temptation, take the depression, take the anxiety, everything. And she said to me, "How's the medication?" I said, "What medication?" Well, she danced me up and down in that surgery. She actually shouted at me, and she said, "Don't you ever come back and tell me you're depressed again, and after what you put Donna through, and this, that and the other." And she was very nice, and this, that and the other, but she knows to this day that I'm a changed man. She knows, and that's that really. The house build was coming towards an end. That ended about 6 or 8 weeks after that. So basically then is what's next for us.
So yeah, so I mean, and when you were talking about like that period before we went to Detlin, there was some massive kind of spiritual warfare going on in that time. And I remember coming home one day because it wasn't working, I had to carry on working, so I was walking here, there and everywhere, doing jobs, and I was walking along and I was in tears just walking along, oh God, you know what. And I really just saw this vision of Jesus. It was just a vision, and I just felt like it was almost like it was showing me that what it was that was causing the problem. It wasn't Nick the problem, it was what's driving Nick that's the problem, you know. So I went home, I put worship music on, I sang my head off for like 2 hours, prayed around the house, opened all the windows, and that house for the first time felt quiet. It just felt quiet and calm, peaceful. And from then on, you know, we went to Detlin, and I was doing this thing and wanted to go to college, wanted to go to university and do this thing. And anyway, we were talking about what we're going to do, what's he going to do really, what are you going to do? We were absolutely delighted that he'd got better and he was feeling so much better. And we started praying for a new job, because the house bill was coming to an end. Started to pray for a new job. And lo and behold, the next thing was that a friend of ours asked us to go up to their house to watch it, the Coventry playing QPR. We went up to watch it at his house on Sky, because we didn't have Sky. We went up there. And anyway, at our time, it was like talking to us once about this thing that he was kind of on the board of. You know, he was a trustee, and it was a cafe on this estate, and you know, says to Nick, you know, "I think you're perfect for the job. God's telling me you're the man for the job." And it was like, "You're joking, aren't you?" You know, I ran my business into the ground. You know, I'm hopeless at managing businesses. I'm still kind of only just getting better. You know, I don't want to do it. But Tim was a man who was absolutely full of faith, and Tim believed that God had said that to him. And he said, just how Tim used to operate, just take it away. And he gave us this brochure about this cafe. Yeah, all right, go away and read it. So we said, right, we'll go away and read it. So we went away and we read it. And we decided we'd go up and look at this place, didn't we? So we went up to Gamesley, which is a social housing estate on the edge of Glossop. And we'd never been to Gamesley, strangely, not in all the time I'd lived there. But we went up there, we went and had a look round. Went to find the lady to let us into the cafe. Walked into this cafe and it was huge, wasn't it? I mean, it was, well, at least as long as this, wasn't it? It was massive.
Longer, yeah.
Longer, probably. Huge thing. And in the middle of the floor there were all these chairs and tables piled up. There was yellow paint everywhere because we'd been painting yellow walls and things. And it was the gloomiest day, it was the most awful day, wasn't it? And we just looked at one another and went, yeah, it just felt right. It just felt like walking into something that was right. And so Nick said, well, there's only one job going. It's not a 2 people job. So I said, oh, well, you know, I'm going to college, you know, I can't help you with that, I can't do that. But I felt like God was saying to me, no, Donna, you've got to help him, you know, you're going to have to help him to do this. So in the end, I gave up the idea of going to university and we decided that we'd go for this cafe. So we went along for the interview, didn't we? And got the job. And that just set off a whole other kind of...
It was amazing, really. I mean, just to roll back a little bit, we were talking about provision before.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Weren't we?
Yeah.
How God provides in the most supernatural, incredible ways at times. You know, when we went to Detlin, on the original journey, we broke down in our car.
Wow.
And we got towed back and the AA said no chance, car's shot for life. But again, I was saying Donna's faith was, I believe we're meant to be at this place. So we just literally had a couple of £100 in, we'd just been paid some social security or whatever, and we hired a car. But when we got back from that conference, there was a cheque there waiting for
the hire of the car.
For the hire of the car, exactly that God has supplied
Wow.
needs.
And the other thing was as well,
That's
kind of that
crazy.
house that I was in, that cottage, we had to sell it to pay off the debt that had accrued. So it was a case of where we were going to live, and some friends of ours again, they were moving out of their house, moving into another house, and they let us have their house for
Wow.
a while. So, you know, they said you can live there, you know, we're
Wow.
going to move back. And Tim, he'd moved back to the Isle of Man where he came from originally, and they were going to go and live in Tim's house. So we did this kind of swap of houses, and
Wow.
we lived there for 5 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
5 years.
So briefly, we took this cafe on. I'd never cooked commercially before.
I could deliver babies, but I was no good at
Donna.
cooking.
Donna
I was like,
Donna was by my side. We ran a team of volunteers. There was only one paid job. Donna volunteered for nearly 17 years,
Wow.
unpaid. I was paid, and I think I was paid pretty well, really, considering. But it was remarkable. It was a bit of a lighthouse. It was a bit of a safe place for people. So we worked with the police. We worked with housing. We worked with education. We worked with any agency we could. As I say, we resisted lottery money fiercely, but God kept providing. Checks
every time we thought
every
that
time
it was
we
coming
were
to
skin.
an end, it would
A cheque would come for £500, or
Yeah.
there was another cafe in Marple that used to send their tip money out once a year, and we got the whole lot one year, and it was about £900 that helped pay some of those bills.
Yeah.
And it was remarkable, and we prayed for people just simply across the counter,
Wow.
and people started getting healed. We had cancers. I was speaking to a lad today, Tom, a couple of weeks before I got COVID. He came hobbling down on his crutches, done his ACL. He was a tremendous footballer, because we ran a football ministry as well from the cafe on a Wednesday night. We had all rogues, every rogue on a Wednesday night on that estate. The police used to throw money at us because they knew where the bad boys were. And we had the most incredible relationship with these lads.
Wow.
And we built relationships. And one of the lads, Tom, who didn't really run with the gang, but he was a wonderful footballer. Anyway, a couple of weeks before I got ill, he came and he was on his crutches and he'd come for his bacon butty and brown sauce. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I've smashed my ACL." He said, "But I need to get back to work, I've got kids." And he was a roofer, so he needed his strength to get up them ladders.
Wow.
I said, "Can I pray for you?" And he said, "Yeah, you can." Next day he walked in without his crutches. 2 weeks later he went to work, and I saw him in Tesco's this morning, and he was the Gamesley football team are doing amazing this year, and I said, "Do you remember back then?" He said, "Yeah, power of God." And he's not following Jesus. He's not following Jesus. He's not made a commitment, but he recognised that God had done something supernatural in his life. Last Sunday, we went to an amazing baptism. A guy called Matt. Matt was a prolific drug dealer. Slippery fish. We stood in court when he was 15 years of age with 4 of the lads who were taunting, racially abusing the guy who ran the Chinese chip shop next door, and the guy came out with a machete, and I stood between the lads and the guy with the machete, Joe, who had the machete, and I said, "Joe, please go back in the, you do something, you're banged up for life." But it went to court, and all 4 lads put their heads down when we swore on the Bible, because they knew. But every one of them came in. We built that relationship up after standing in court, where they could have, it was just another layer to their asbos. They had files like that.
Yeah.
But Matt, one of the lads, he got baptised last Sunday.
Wow.
Prolific drug dealer.
Incredible.
Addicted to ketamine,
Wow.
heroin, and everything. And literally, he came suited and booted just before I was ill. And I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to court, I'm going to prison for a very long time." And this guy is got a great character. He's got a smile that would break 1,000 hearts. He'd walk in, a girl's heart, he'd just break a girl's heart with a smile. Beautiful smile. Deep down, a really good kid, but had a horrible upbringing. And I said, "I don't think prison's for you, lad." He'd been with me once for 2 years. It's the worst environment you can go. I'm going to pray that if the judge can somehow sentence something else, that you don't go to prison. That happened. He walked free. Yeah, well, he did walk free because he had to serve different things to pay for his crime. And all of a sudden, lots of people started coming alongside him. So he's massive fitness freak, and all of a sudden he's got a gym. Today he's running a mental health group.
Wow.
God has so transformed his life, and he's at the start of his Christian walk.
And when he said he was getting baptised, he asked us to. He rang us up. He said, "I want to meet you. Can you come down and see me?" Yeah.
That's
So we go
crazy.
and meet him. And I thought he was going to marry Becky, his girlfriend. And I bet he's going to marry Becky, so that's what it is. And when we got there, he went, "I want you to be there when I get baptised, because I'm getting baptised next week." And it was just like, "Oh wow, that's amazing."
But what he said at his baptism was, he said, I've heard Nick's story many times, and I just got to the stage where I wanted the same as him. I wanted to be free.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Tom said today, he said, "You went to Matt's baptism, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That lad's reborn." I said, "Well, do you know what it is to be reborn?" So I explained to him, I said, what it is to be a born again Christian. And I said, "Look, I know you're not there, but I know Matt goes to a really good church, gets really supported. There's lots of young people. Why don't you go one day?" And that's it, really.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think there was there were so many people got healed, weren't there? And in that time, it was a real time of healing. But one that really also stood out was there was a lady that used to come, and she brought a young little boy. He was only about 8 months old at the time, 9 months old. He was premature, and he had oxygen blindness, so he had real kind of destruction of
bless
optic
him.
nerves. And the cafe was full this day, and I just felt this prompting, you've got to go and pray for this child, and it was like, oh no, not. The child is blind. It's like, yeah, go and pray for it. So I went round the corner, I went up to her and just said, Mum, dear, do you mind if I just pray for Jackie? And she said, no, come on, come and pray for him. What are you going to pray? And I said, well, I'm going to pray that he sees. So she was like, yeah, right, okay. So pray that this child sees. Anyway, that was that. She goes out, and weeks go by, don't they? Nothing. We were sat there one afternoon like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Having a bad day, bad hair day. Next news, the door bursts up. And she just said, he can see. And I said, since when? And she said, since the day after you prayed for him. She said, we've had him in light boxes, and he was looking around, and they took him to the consultant. They don't know how he can see. He's registered blind in the sense that he has quite strong glasses to wear, obviously. But he went to a mainstream school. That lad's 17 now, he's 15 now. And he went to a mainstream school. And I just think sometimes in those places where there was a lot of need, there was a lot of people who didn't have a lot, there was a lot of people who just needed a touch from God, just to help them along, just to get them. And I went to a leaders conference, and there was a lady who was talking from the front, and I got her to pray for me afterwards, and she said, you know what, I can see this really hard ground that you're digging, but I can see that there's flowers coming up behind you. And I just look at it like people like Matt and the lads that we had, and all the people we prayed for, and
we've heard of 9 people on the estate in the last few months get baptised.
Wow, that's
now,
incredible stuff.
Baptised from our church or the church that we used to get to, but churches around the bottom, 9 people.
And they get in touch with us to tell us. Got baptised last week. It's like, and it's just lovely, because I just think sometimes you don't know, do you?
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know, but
the
God's so gracious, he just let us know that these people are doing.
But the scripture that's really dear to me is Psalm 40 verse 1 and 2. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me, heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet upon a rock and gave me a firm place to stand.
Wow.
And he put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God.
Wow.
And it's all for God's glory. He's done it. We've had to be obedient along the line in the various things, but he's done it.
Yes, amen.
The Spirit, the Holy Spirit, has done it.
Wow, definitely.
And
amazing.
that's just a bit of our story.
Wow.
There's lots more.
So in COVID, Nick got COVID right at the end of COVID.
March 22.
Right at the end, we'd had loads of bereavements that couple of years, haven't we? We'd had Nick's father died early on. My sister died. She had cancer. My mum died. All in COVID time, like kind of in that time. And
I got COVID really.
Nick got COVID really bad at the end.
Weeks.
Yeah, and the cafe just came to a close. It had to close in the end because we were just losing money hand over fist really at that point. And it seemed like the end of the world to us really, didn't it, in some respects. But you know what, out of that, God has done other things. And we wouldn't be in Barnsley if we'd have stayed there, and we won't be here if we hadn't gone to Barnsley. So it's kind of like, to me, God knows, doesn't he? And he knows what he wants you to do next and where you need to be next. So in COVID, I wrote our story in COVID, and I thought, you know, at least do something. And that was, yeah, that's how we've ended up. So we've ended up at Love Life, and we
Wow.
love it, don't we?
Well,
Wow.
it's funny you say that because a few years ago, God gave me a title, By My Grace. And I said, what's that about, Lord? And he said, write a book. What? What? I wasn't good at English at school, and you want me to write a book? And he says, yes, you've got to write your life story from your birth right to through to everything you've been involved with, everything you've done, and to this day, you've got to write your life story. So that's a challenge that God gave me for this year.
Do it.
Write that book.
Do it.
Just do a little bit each day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I told him, get a notebook and write down whatever comes
Yeah.
to your mind.
Yeah,
You can put it in
absolutely.
Yeah,
one
just
book.
write it.
See, he asked me if I goes right for him. I said, yeah, just get a notepad and write down
Yeah, absolutely.
what when you think of stuff, just write it
absolutely.
down.
That's
and
what I
then
did.
you sort out the chronology at a
Yeah.
later date.
Yeah, well, that's what I need to do because even last year I was getting little bits in my mind, collecting in my mind, I've never written down, so I need to actually take it from my mind and write them down.
Yeah,
you
you've
said.
got to write them down because you forget.
Yeah. That's some discipline I've got to do this year.
Do it.
It's been